What's up, YouTube? Let me start this video off by saying I rather like this IP. Vampire the Masquerade is an intriguing world of subterfuge, classism, subtlety, veiled threats and conspiracies, all wrapped up in good old modern day America. There is so much lore and so much that can be added to the role-playing experience in playing as a modern-day vampire. And I'm also a huge fan of visual novels. Some of my favorites are the Danganronpa trilogy, the Nonary Games trilogy, and of course the 10 games in the Ace Attorney franchise. I nearly wept with joy at seeing that there would be an official translation of the second Ace Attorney Investigations game, and was elated at seeing good old Sherlock Holmes in the great Ace Attorney games. Visual novels can be a lot of fun. Whether that's being quote-unquote railroaded into the particular path the game wants to bring you down, finding secrets or alternative solutions to the puzzles or scenarios, or having the freedom to explore and discover things all on your own. It's all about the presentation and the quality of the writing, for the most part. The gameplay, if there is any, really takes a back seat, and most visual novels have a tendency to focus on either puzzles or use of logic. Of course, the story absolutely has to carry the game, and that's what the game will focus the most on. If I had to put the story in terms of percentage of the game succeeding for visual novels, it pretty much is 95% important to the game's success. Sure, the puzzles/logic and other aspects of gameplay can be important, but the story has to be compelling. If it were a book, it has to be a page-turner, a just one more page, one more chapter affair. If it's a TV series, it's a just one more episode affair. Or a, fuck, I can't wait a whole week to find out what happens next. I gotta see if this shit leaked or came out early or something. I don't need sleep, I need answers type of shit. Ironically, though the genre almost seems limited to being games focused on mystery solvings, be them murders or other capers, I'll also have to do a full playthrough of Raincode on the PS5 as well, and am always keeping an eye out for a sale on the 100-line Last Defense Academy. I hope I have made my love for the genre clear, along with my interest and minor history with the Vampire the Masquerade IP. That being said, I'm about to shit on, all over, and inside of this super shitty game. It is one of the worst games I have ever had the misfortune of playing. Swan Song is basically a very poor walking simulator with arbitrary stats to make shit in the early game impossible. For some bizarre reason, all three of the vampires we play as start as if they were neophytes, all with the most basic of abilities. For 1.5 of the characters, this is potentially excusable. The other 1.5 isn't. Consequently, only 1.5 of the playable characters are any good. Also, For some super retarded reason, the choices in the dialogue trees are done in almost a second person perspective, sort of like the character is having a conversation with themselves. So pretty much none of the dialogue matches or even comes remotely close to what is said by the characters. There is literally zero reason or justification for this. If your game focuses on dialogue and conversational choices for more than 70% of the game, you need to be fucking accurate with your dialogue choices. And as the game goes on, the dialogue options get worse, and some of them even have time limits to pick the correct option. Let's take a brief overview of our cast. First, we have Caleb, a half-tolerable character with no excuses for being level 1. The guy is multiple centuries old, going on nearly 300 years as a vampire, and yet he's still fucking level 1? He's a half-tolerable character due to his mild competence, decent abilities, and smart-ish dialogue. He is a Ventrue vampire, known for being wise leaders, either due to being nobility or high-ranking members of society, with specializations in domination, fortitude, and presence, the vampire version of minor brainwashing or aura farming. However, Caleb is also kind of bland, not showing much emotion in any of his dialogue, despite him clearly being angered or upset. There's Laisha, hands down the best character. She is a Malkavian, being a race of vampires known for having visions that allow them to predict possible futures and have questionable mental faculties as a result, having specialties in Auspics, which are enhanced senses that can show sense or even past memories, Obfuscate, which allows her to turn invisible, blend in with any crowd, or even perfectly impersonate people, and Dominate, which allows her to warp and bend humans and the undead's minds. Her design is great too. One look at her and you'll immediately think, wow, this bitch is clearly unstable. Sure, she may be presentable and is holding it together for now, but she clearly could snap and go psychotic on anyone at any time. She presents as fit for service, a desperate bid not so much to convince others, but to convince herself that she is sane. And her character makes some sense to start off as low-leveled, as due to her failing mental condition and worsening mental state, she has been in a state of hibernation for an extended period of time, possibly reaching into years, so it makes total sense for her to be rusty, not accustomed to the stress of the real world again after so long. She's really the only good character in this whole game. Finally, we have the worst character in the entire game, Emmum. Emmum is a Toreador, a clan of vampires known for being beautiful, seductive, emotional, and glamorous, aka everything that Emmum is not. Her abilities focus on presence, auspics, and celerity, the art of moving with unnatural speed and precision. In the first scene, Emmum appears to be super dolled up, and it is quite jarring to see her outfit and design change drastically without much reason from the first scene to the next scene. Has the worst dialogue in the game, not helped by her voice actress, who can't seem to express emotion, not guilt, not sadness, not desperation, and only hints or modicums of anger. Of course, is initially seen wearing gold because she knows that no matter how much value she shows or presents, that will never change the fact that she herself is completely worthless. Hilda, sire, absolutely made a mistake in embracing however, is pretty much the only character that makes sense to be starting out at level 1, as she is the youngest of the group, having only been embraced pretty much just prior to the Second World War. She would be considered by many to be a neonate, and hasn't had much, if any, chances to prove herself, meaning she is absolutely inexperienced, making it reasonable to expect her to be the lowest leveled. In terms of dialogue, has the worst, with pretty much 90% of the options not adequately presenting what will be said. Leisha's are the second worst, as the first half are mostly fine and on target, while the second half becomes too emotional, showing her inner turmoil. And Galeb's are the most direct with the choices, with about 25% of them not adequately showing what the options are. I used a guide to make as quick work of this game as possible. My playtime was only around 14 hours, and would have been about an hour faster had it not been for glitches and bullshit. Most guides say it takes about 30, and I say don't waste your time at all with this crap game. The sound mixing in this game is also awful. You can see that I boosted the master volume some and boosted the voice volume all the way, but it's still crap. Some lines just don't play, and many conversations and events change volume. I'm talking line-to-line changes in volume, made worse when alternating people. The game also loves to have directional audio, where if something isn't directly in frame, the sound becomes muffled. This even applies to the conversations and confrontations, where if the speaking party isn't in the frame because the camera is doing a close-up on the listening party, then the speaker's dialogue gets fucking muffled. When majority of the game is fucking talking, how do you fuck up this bad? Let's get into the trophies and the play-by-play. So we do the basic intro and meet some of the supporting cast we don't care about, like the annoyingly designed prince, who really should have been offed in every ending regardless of your choices. The prince's assistant with vitiligo, whose name isn't important. Hilda, sire and ex-girlfriend who has the absolute weirdest body proportions. Zhu Fang and Beryl, Galeb's child and child-to-be. And Beryl sticks around an annoyingly long time. And Halsey, Leisha's daughter, who talks with a lisp, probably because the voice actress couldn't sound like a young enough kid, so they added the lisp to make her sound younger. The prologue introduces us to the characters and sets up the motions of the coming game. A party was being held to celebrate and help commemorate a deal to better uphold the masquerade, the global conspiracy to keep vampires a secret from the general public, where something goes terribly wrong and most of the party members are confirmed to be KIA or MIA. And Galeb, and Leisha have to find out what's up, with each of them going to separate locations. During this chapter, we switch between playing as Galeb, and Leisha, get introduced to the idea of safe zones, areas which we can use to feed to reduce our hunger, and the super glitchy feeding minigame, which at least half the time doesn't work. It doesn't work as half the time holding down the trigger just stops. I'm not sure if it's just because the gauge fills at variable rates, or if it has something to do with the adaptive triggers on PS5, but apparently it's a known and unfixed glitch across all versions of the game. So, just more janky bullshit. So, when starting scenes, you will have a chance to give your character more specs. Follow the guide to the letter, and honestly, this system sucks. Most of the skills and options are useless or serve to get the same result with no change in gameplay or choice, with the dialogue being verbatim half the time anyway. Very few of the skills actually get used too, so the inherent design of this system is flawed and an abject failure. Just follow the guide, the game isn't worth trying to experiment with. Following the guide, the first trophy pops for getting a skill or discipline to level 3. Then, when we convince Journey to leave, not just the scene but the rest of the game too, we get the trophy for winning a confrontation without using a discipline. Yeah, all of the combat in this game boils down to a crappy argument that never doesn't feel one-sided, and MMs are the absolute worst, with extreme tonal shifts line to line, and the most brain-dead lines that don't match practically any choice. We then do Leisha's story to do some more investigation with some overlap into MM's story, and see that Leisha specifically has stealth segments due to her special abilities. Then another switch to MM briefly to deal with the super shittily designed prince, and then finally to Caleb. Caleb goes to interrogate Beryl and check the security footage. Upon completing this scene, a trophy will pop. Up next is the first ReAL level, where we'll be playing with Caleb. This level is one of the biggest in the game, with tons of nooks and crannies and boring shit. We get introduced to the idea of suspicious items, things we need to grab to protect the masquerade. Usually there's just a couple of items per level, except for this level and a single Leisha level where there's like 7. As I made my way through this level towards the very end of the QTE sequence, I had a power outage, meaning I lost some data. Playing it again, everything was going fine, until the very last choice where my TV put up some warning over the choices. And despite me holding the direction of the choice I wanted, it defaulted to the wrong option, so I had to play the level again. Though I did get the trophy for not executing anyone on the way out. This second time when I got to the end, even though I did everything right, for some reason one of the objectives didn't pop, despite several other objectives being otherwise impossible to complete without one of the middle objectives, meaning I wouldn't have enough EXP for later missions. This game is almost as poorly programmed as Gen 1 Pokemon, maybe even worse. So I had to play this mission for a fucking third time that finally worked. Up next is a Leisha mission, the only mission with a heavy focus on Leisha's mental instability, where throughout the mission 3 times we need to calm down the beast that is Halsey. Our first feeding here also gets us the trophy, You Are What You Eat, for getting a resonance on each character. Yeah, certain NPCs that you feed on give you some perks. Once again, just follow the guide. And once we calm Halsey the 3rd time, we will get another trophy. We are able to rescue the doctor, along with sneaking out of the area with a vampire for the prince. We meet the primary antagonist group of the game, the Second Inquisition, an armed militant group of vampire hunters. Finally, for this set, we have to play as MM again, who has inexplicably changed clothes and a hairstyle for the rest of the game. We don't even know what happened. We just get knocked out and locked up. We have feed on some rats for a trophy, and apparently doing so increases the suspicion level within the scene, which is really weird, as who cares about rats? Who is even seeing us do this? And not only that, but the only NPCs here are vessels, people to feed on, so what do we care about the suspicion here? This mission, for some reason, focuses all about MM's life story and the details of her embrace, which is just slow, pointless, and time-wasting. Seeing this didn't make me like anymore. If anything, it made me dislike her even more. This level also has the most annoying puzzle that needs to be completed 6 times to get what we need to get. Completing this level nets us another trophy. The next level is another triple whammy. First with us playing as Caleb to cuss out Beryl again, then playing as again to discover that Halsey is supposed to be dead on behalf of orders from the prince. Honestly, this also feels wrong, as the puzzles here seem to be very far beyond MM's mental faculties, especially shown through how poor MM's dialogue is throughout the game. And we wrap up with a short part of playing as Leisha, ending with us taking the medicine so that we can get a reprieve from the lisp. We get another trophy, and once again there is a large gap of time for the following scenes. Again, starting with Caleb, we sneak our way through the SI base, trying to get some more info, destroy what's needed, and see what damage we can do. There are 2 trophies here as well. The first for murdering all 3 high-ranked SI members, and the second for using the right implant on the first try. We end up meeting the SI boss, get captured anyway, and go through one of the most poorly implemented torture scenes I've ever seen. How the hell does Silent Hill Homecoming have more gruesome torture scenes than this? Every animation here is just so limp, lifeless, and weak, and they couldn't even be bothered to actually show the damage process, just the result after some transitions. Up next is a lengthy Leisha mission. We need to make sure nothing can be grabbed by the SI who are on their way. We get a trophy for making sure the vessel escapes, and make sure to destroy the chemicals afterwards. We also slay the previous prince, and then discover that the good doctor actually kept Halsey alive. Then we get a schizo scene with Leisha putting some of the clues together. We can then use Leisha to invade the base. Up next is the absolute worst scene of MM's. Needs to convince the Anarchs, vampires who don't respect or want to follow the prince, the Camarilla, or the Masquerade. However, this is clearly a suicide mission, and they're only a distraction to let infiltrate the base and wipe all of the SI's data. We can get a trophy here for winning a confrontation while hungry, and another for convincing all 3 faction leaders to help us. Up next, we play as Leisha, seeing how she can infiltrate the base and possibly rescue Halsey. This scene will need to be played twice for trophies, so make a backup here. We make our way through, torturing a soldier as revenge through our special vampire powers. And towards the end, we have a choice. Kill the doctor, or let him live. We murder him the first time, which is done poorly and isn't satisfying at all. Then we do the scene again to let him live, each time earning a trophy. We then play as for a fairly worthless scene. The only thing of note is that we learn that there are 2 traitors in the Camarilla, and one of them has been captured. Also, at the beginning, is leaving the water, swimming to the ladder. How is she not wet at all? We then swap to Caleb and earn the trophy for starting the SAD base scene, which we've been in now for quite a while. Why is this popping here? Is it because Caleb is first chronologically? The only things of note here are the absolute dog shit scene of Caleb breaking free, meeting and freeing a werewolf, and rescuing Beryl. We then get the next scene of MM's, netting us a trophy for getting a skill to level 5. We go through and use one of the Anarchs to tell us more info on the traitor that was caught, netting us another trophy. This scene is pretty short. We then play as Caleb again, discovering the final safe zone, netting us a trophy, and try to pin down the location of the SI leader. It's a real shame we can't just bring Paula with us. Our only options are wipe her mind or kill her, which sucks. She seemed redeemable. We then have a short but annoying scene with Laisha. A backup needs to be made here as well. The only thing to do in this scene is opening a door while stealthily avoiding the werewolf. This scene sucks, as set pieces just don't work. The werewolf is extremely aggressive, and several transitions just don't work to reset or move the werewolf like they are supposed to do. This scene took me about 45 minutes to get through because the stealth sucks that much. But I did it, and got the trophy. The next scene here also needs us to make another backup. We play as MM, starting off with killing the vampire we freed in the memory mission, netting us a trophy. We make our way to the server room and discover that the remaining alive traitor is Hilda, who wanted to eradicate the Boston Camarilla to allow for the London branch to invade and take over. We upload the virus and bail, once again entering a pool of water but never getting or being wet. Guess the developers couldn't be bothered. We then play as Laisha and need to rescue Halsey within about 10 minutes. We get a trophy at the beginning here that may or may not pop, as the discipline we have isn't actually at level 5, it's just a temp perk that boosts it. We need to keep Halsey calm or she will rape our mind as well. Once Halsey is rescued, we also earn another trophy. We then get to the last Caleb scene where we confront Stanford in one of the most anticlimactic scenes ever. We basically just convince Stanford to have his faith waver so that we can drain all of his blood. Very lame and anticlimactic. We then proceed to the final set of scenes. First as Caleb, we choose to heed the beckoning to leave, netting a trophy. As MM, we need to confront Hilda about being a traitor, and by having our celerity high enough, we can somehow give Hilda final death, in another terrible cutscene that just goes on forever, netting us two trophies, one for ending Hilda and another for getting promoted to Primogen, a position MM is wholly undeserving. We earn another trophy for making sure all 3 characters survive the night, and see that Laisha and Halsey abandoned Boston to live together, netting us another trophy, and then, after skipping the credits, another trophy. Going back to the werewolf save, we need to have Laisha die to the werewolf, then have MM die in one of the most satisfying cutscenes in the game, and then have Caleb fail against Stanford, who then somehow exorcises Caleb. Everyone dies, including basically the whole Camarilla, save for Hilda, who escapes and then rules with the London branch, netting us a trophy. Then, going back again, we need to waste time for 10 minutes so that Laisha can't save Halsey. We continue as normal, this time in the final scene having Caleb stay for a trophy, and for having MM leave the Camarilla for another. During the ending, we also see that Laisha is captured by the Vatican for another trophy. Finally, the last playthrough we have to do is to let Halsey rape our mind and then do whatever is fastest for the endings. We see that the SI has captured Laisha this time, netting us the final trophy and the platinum. Thank the goddess this game is done now. This game sucks. It is barely a game, with so many flaws and issues that any fun to be had or potential is simply squandered, wasted, and pissed away. The game fails at being a visual novel, as there is simply too much pointless walking, and most of the dialogue doesn't match the options shown. EXP becomes useless towards the very end, and there are a myriad of issues regarding skill uses and skill checks. A fair amount of abilities are pointless, as there is nothing in the game that requires their use or a higher level. In fact, most things can be gotten at level 3, with very few needing level 4. Almost nothing needs level 5. The early game has a ton of impossible skill checks, and by the end, when you're properly leveled, there's nothing to use them on. Some of the puzzles are simple, while others are just obtuse. One such example is the elevator with the bloodline puzzles as MM, as there is nothing around or in the environment to suggest that the puzzles will need to be completed twice per instance. And the glitches all serve to break the game in many ways or render it unplayable, that combined with most choices not having any impact on what actually happens, that it's like the game wants to punish you for playing it. The game fails as a story-driven game, fails at being a proper visual novel, fails at making likable characters with only one entire character being good throughout the whole game, and even fails at consistency with its own mechanics. Don't waste your time on this game. Go play literally anything else. The game's platinum is a 3 out of 10 due to the multitude of glitches that lock, block, or break trophies, and the game itself is a 4 out of 100, the lowest so far in the channel. The only redeeming qualities are the IP itself, the world, and the single good character. This game was one of the biggest and worst chores I've ever had to slog through. I thought this game would be fun, and the type of game was right up my alley, but it just sucks. So, like and subscribe, and remember, only losers actually like this game, and only super idiot retard losers think MM is a good character.